Hello and welcome to another episode of So Fly. You might hear some birds chirping, the wind rustling, and Yilma swatting mosquitoes and black flies because we are on location in the Margaree River Valley. Of course, I've got, my name is Aldo, and I've got my wonderful co-host here, Yilma.
Hello, everyone.
And we have a very special guest. Mitchell Roberts is a accomplished angler and fantastic fly tyer. You might already follow them. They're on Instagram as at Life Between Lines. And to say that their fly tying as artwork is putting it pretty lightly. But Mitchell, we've been spending a few days with Mitchell here fishing the Margaree and fishing their beautiful flies. And a native Nova Scotian.
You got that right.
An Atlantic salmon fanatic.
Also correct.
And a tyer of classic Atlantic salmon flies. Mitchell Roberts, I know you've been a fan of the show for a long time, so it's so cool to actually connect. And it's great to have you on the show. Welcome on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's cool to be here after being such a long-time listener.
Yeah, it's awesome. And
Great intro.
Great. Thanks. I was kind of just
It was
going
on the
off.
fly.
It was just on the fly. I was like, oh, crap, we usually do a bio.
Yeah.
It was very flattering. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's well-deserved. If anybody, like I was saying, if you do follow Mitchell on Instagram, if you don't, you should, at Life Between Lines. We can talk about, we're going to get all to that later, but the fly tying is just amazing. It's just incredible work. Which is, if it's safe to say, is it a classic? Oh, Scott and Kate, we're here with Scott and Kate Sheeran too, and they just went and got pizza. So if you hear a dog and a car, that's them. We've been fishing for the past 2 or 3 days here in the Margaree. It's super special, and I guess we'll just start with where are we? I know we're in the Margaree Valley, but I don't know town names. I don't know where are we in relation to Halifax. Where are we, Mitchell?
Yeah, so we're up here. We're pretty far up the river. We're near the community of Portree, just down the road from Ross's Bridge, pretty popular salmon pool. The Margaree Valley is kind of nestled along the west coast of Cape Breton Island. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. It's one of the prettiest places you can wet a line. About 3.5 hours from Halifax. Not terrible.
Not terrible at all.
No, a very doable drive. I used to do day trips when I lived in the city, and it's a little much, but it was doable.
You would do day trips up here?
Yeah, I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning once and met my friend at his place for 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were on the river fishing for 6 o'clock in the morning, and I got home that night at 11 p.m. And I was so tired that I hallucinated there was a little creepy girl in my back seat, and she kept me awake. I was terrified.
You didn't tell me that part.
Oh, it was...
Was it a hallucination?
Oh, big time. I looked in the rear view and was stunned. Wide awake.
Why?
Whoa.
That would keep me up.
Yeah.
Or just see some salmon swimming in the
rearview mirror.
But it's a beautiful place. We've got the, I don't know, what mountains are these behind us?
Oh, I don't know all the names of them, but there's quite a range here along the...
Scott just left these.
Oh.
No. Scott and Kate are off to the river, and we're gonna meet them because it's 6 p.m. here, and it's been a hot day, so we want to get last light on the river because it's cooling down, and we think that's going to turn the salmon on. But the water is cold, so we're not too worried in terms of like fish health.
Yeah.
But it's more like, are they gonna play?
Yeah, exactly.
And do we want to play when it's that hot?
Yeah.
The other factor.
Well, we just caught up from a salmon siesta, so we're fresh and ready for this podcast. But yeah, we're our backdrop is pretty amazing. We're like I mentioned, we are in the Margaree River Valley, which you would assume means that we are surrounded by mountains, and we are. Lush green mountains with birdies chirping on them, and it's a pretty awesome place to do the podcast. And if you're watching us on YouTube, like maybe you should, you'll see the mountains in the background behind Mitchell's face. Oh, it's pretty wicked. Okay, well, why don't we start from the beginning? It's our usual thing. How'd you get into fly fishing? What drew you to fly fishing? And do you remember your first fish on the fly?
Yeah, fishing's always been a pretty big part of my life. I grew up in the town of Shubenacadie in Nova Scotia.
One more time.
Shubenacadie.
Got it.
Can we pause for a second and just say how great of a radio voice you have?
Yeah.
Thank you. I've never thought that I had a great radio voice, but as I mentioned to Yilma, I do have a great radio face. So
I don't. That's not true. When you see Mitchell on YouTube, you'll disagree.
Yeah. Anyway, I grew up in Shubenacadie, very small town on the Shubenacadie River, which is a Bay of Fundy tidal river. So it looks like chocolate milk all the time. The tide rises 10 feet in 10 minutes. Striped bass run up that river. It's the only remaining spawning population of striped bass in the Bay of Fundy. So I grew up pretty attached to fish. At that time, just throwing junk bait for stripers off the bottom, and fell in love with them. I didn't know what trout looked like until I was a teenager, and I had tried to get into fishing more because I was really, really into snowboarding, and to the point where March would come and I'd get kind of depressed because I had nothing left to do. My personality was on the ski hill, and I had to leave that behind for 8 or 9 months of the year. So I looked for other hobbies. I tried longboarding. I have a lot of scars to show for that.
Yeah, that's cool.
I was never.
Is there good snowboarding in Nova Scotia? I'm sorry, I'm ignorant.
That's pretty good. Yeah, we have some decent ski hills. It's not like Quebec or Maine or anything, but it's pretty good. I was a ski patroller for a while. It was fun place to be for sure. Anyway, yeah, I got more into fishing over the years just to try and fill that void. And we were on a family trip actually for a ski trip down to Maine, and I had popped into a Dick's Sporting Goods and saw a fly rod combo, just a $50 rod, reel, line,
classic,
like 2 flies, something
classic beginning.
Yeah, and I had seen fly fishing in various forms of media, and I thought, well, that could be a fun new project, give that a whirl. And so I picked it up. Anyway, we were at a family dinner one night with a bunch of other kind of family friends, other ski family friends, and I mentioned that I was going to give this fly fishing thing a whirl, and one of the dads of the other family said, well, I've been fly fishing for 30 years. He said, I'd happily take you.
Wow.
I said, yes, please, yes. And so we planned a day, and I went out with he and his good fishing buddy Charlie, and he was super generous with his time and his knowledge, and he had lots of it to share. So spent a number of trips out to the river, and I kind of fell in love pretty immediately and picked up fly tying sort of in the same breath. I was so invested in fly fishing that when the day ended, the sun went down and I had to go home, I needed to keep fly fishing emotionally. And so I picked up fly tying so I could just keep fishing at my desk, while watching YouTube videos about fly fishing in the back. I really fell head over heels in love. And
that's great.
Yeah, it was.
You sound like Adis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. I would love to nerd out with Adis a bit more about that.
Well, that'll definitely happen.
It'll happen.
Wish he was here. He'd
oh
my God.
He would absolutely love this place.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who wouldn't.
Well, he likes swinging flies, and
He does.
nerding out with you would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Icing
He
on the
would love
cake.
this trip. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can make this a regular thing.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Is it safe? Because we're in a very fishy place.
Absolutely.
Fly fishing only. Everyone's got fly fishing rods on their cars. Is
Mhm.
Nova Scotia a fly fishy place outside of Cape Breton? Is that fair to say? Like where you grew up and where you lived?
Not so much where I grew up. So the Shubenacadie at that time in particular was really just sort of a bait kind of river. People threw soft plastics and lures and stuff. But it's definitely grown along, I guess, everywhere else too. Fly fishing has gotten more popular. But there has always been sort of a culture of fly fishing in Nova Scotia. We were traditionally a very popular destination for salmon anglers back in the day before some of our other rivers kind of declined. There were 3 big salmon rivers that drew people from all over the world. So everyone kind of fly fished at one point in time, especially for our native brook trout as well, because we got some pretty incredible brook trout streams. But
yeah,
I mean you've been acquainted.
Oh yeah.
You've met.
It's gorgeous.
I mean, that every day we're fishing, there's rising brook trout everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. These are very healthy rivers.
Yeah.
And it was like that across the board at one point in time, right? But things have gotten a little bit different, especially as you go south in the province now. We've got some issues with invasive species and stuff. But back to the original question, we have a ton of history with fly fishing, and there's a good blend, I would say, of people that fish
Nice.
spinning gear and bait and all that stuff.
Okay, so you learn how to fly fish. You pretty much instantly get interested in tying. Do you remember your first fish on the fly?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the first night I went out with Darren and Charlie, we went to a river in the town of Tatamagouche called the Waz. So the Waz is where I cut my teeth, so to speak. Darren introduced me to a couple stretches on that river, and my very first fish on the fly rod was this tiny little brook trout.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
My first fish on the fly too.
A little brook trout.
A little brook trout.
Yeah, I mean they're so pretty. It's hard not to fall in love with them right away. And that river has a number of brook trout and brown trout and a salmon run in the fall. So that evening we just sort of spent learning and hammering away at these little sipping brook trout and brown trout, and had a wonderful time. It was pretty hard not to fall in love.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then after that, like, you just dove in. And you could, I mean, because you're fishing for stripers, obviously you're fishing for salmon now. Did you kind of have like a new outlook on where you were because you were close to stripers? And you're like, oh my god, I could probably get these on the fly.
Well, it was definitely years later before I picked up stripers. I kind of felt for a while I lacked confidence, and I think part of why fly fishing is so important to me is that I built confidence in myself through fly fishing over the years. I felt like a more confident person overall as I got better at the sport and got kind of more involved in the community and made more connections, which I think is probably common for a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a gateway to confidence.
Yeah.
Those first couple of years were largely brook trout and some invasives that were a little bit more simple to catch in the summertime.
You can say smallmouth bass. We like bass.
Okay, cool.
Maybe not when it's an invasive species. But
Yeah.
I do caveat. I love fishing for them, and I think they're a fantastic fly rod fish. I just wish I had to travel to fish for them because they do kind of a number on our ecosystems. But
Yeah.
and we have invasive chain pickerel as well that are also not great for our little trout and our salmon par.
Mm-hmm.
How did chain pickerel get here? People put them in?
They were introduced initially as a food source.
Oh.
For people working in forestry, as far as I understand it.
Oh, okay.
What I've been told. And then over the years, either accidentally or on purpose, people take the invasives and they introduce them to other lakes thinking, I'd love to catch those, closer to home as well, and maybe not realizing the consequences.
Oh, God, these fat brookies suck. Please give me please give me a chain pickerel. No offense to chain pickerel, of course.
Yeah.
No, again, a fun fly rod fish, but I wish I didn't have them in my backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half of brook trout fishing, and Darren, my mentor, always spoke about salmon fishing. That was his bread and butter. He loved salmon fishing to death. And a year and a half or so goes by, and he said, "Okay, I think you're ready to graduate now. You can. I'm going to take you salmon fishing." I said, "Great. What do I need?" And he was sort of an early adopter of spey rods in Nova Scotia, long before most people had seen one on this coast. And, I think probably 30 years or so of spey fishing experience. And it was never a question. It was just, here's the rod you need, here's the line, here are the flies, here's what we do. So it felt a little bit like starting over. I felt like I'd, had
big time.
like a firm grasp on this fishing thing after my year and a half of wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
And suddenly I got to learn it all again. That's crazy talk, but it was good. It forced me to adopt this culture of learning early on, and
Right.
I don't feel like I'll ever stop.
Oh, that was weird. No, you can keep going.
Yeah, no, and that's I never did stop. I kept fishing for salmon, and every year I get a little better. Every year I pick up more tidbits. Every year I hash out more crackpot theories with Scotty over the phone. we learn more. They're an interesting fish.
You're not going to stop learning.
No,
It's a lifelong thing. Right?
I firmly believe that you stop learning the moment you decide that you've stopped learning.
Right.
Like if you've decided you know everything, congratulations. You know all that you're going to know. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
Well, I know for us too, like spey is new for us for the most part, but
How many times have we? Every time I go out, it's like new. to me. I have to like relearn it, and in order to make sure that you're comfortable with it, I feel like it needs to be a pattern every year, but unfortunately I don't get the opportunity.
Yeah, can we just say state for the record here how great of a spey caster Mitchell
Oh
is?
yeah. Oh, I thought we were going to get that in. Okay. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. We got to
Yeah.
talk about your spey casting
Flies.
and pick your brain.
Yeah.
Fly tying, and then just things in general.
Yeah. But those are the two.
What drew you to spey casting? Like when you saw it when they brought, because we've been fishing, you can fish single hand and spey here. Both are very effective. Whether it's wet flies or bombers. Obviously, you're not really throwing bombers on a two-handed rod, but the Margaree can definitely be big in some spaces and some runs and whatnot. So the spey is certainly extraordinarily effective. So, did you start single hand fishing for salmon and then go to spey, or were you just like spey first, spey only?
Spey all the way.
Spey
all the way. Yeah. And I think I might have mentioned this to you earlier too. I have a single hand salmon rod now. I bought it this winter.
You felt naked today on the river.
That's what I said. I brought it with me on our big walk today, and I didn't bring the spey rod, and I felt naked. I didn't know what to do. It's the longest I've been away from my spey rods. But this is the first season that I have owned a single hand salmon rod, and I've been salmon fishing for 10 or 12 years at this point. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's.
I'm not gonna lie, you look pretty comfortable with it.
I mean, I single hand fish for other stuff, but the salmon. And
you're so disappointed.
Yeah, but I mean, as you know too, even my single hand rods are, single hand spey lines.
Yeah.
Largely,
I never heard of that line before. What brand is that?
That was the Wolf Ambush. It's a triangle taper line. Sort of like if you took like a switch chucker or a rage, something that's sort of in that weird middle zone between a Scandi and a Skagit, and you made that single hand rod sized, that's what a Wolf Ambush kind of is. It'll turn over something larger like a bomber pretty easily, which is kind of why I thought it would be a good first single hand salmon line for me.
Yeah.
I have it on another rod or two that I fish for other things with similar kind of applications, like large poppers for bass and chain pickerel and stuff. So yeah. It's a lovely line. I really like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your spey casting and why you're so good at it, and what you've turned it into. Meaning, trying to.
Yeah. I see where you're heading.
Yeah, where I'm heading.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you literally met two amazing people on the river 2 days ago, and
Susan and Susie,
and today you were giving them a lesson.
Yeah, they liked what they saw and they wanted to do it.
They're like on the river, like, hey,
you can help me.
Yeah, no, they booked a lesson immediately. They were so cool. I really, really liked hanging out with them. Yeah, so I guess to start at the beginning of that question, I mean, initially, I didn't even know that there was really a choice. Like from the perspective I had fishing with Darren, it was sort of like, this is how you fish for salmon. So like, figure it out. And then I realized other people didn't all do that, but I felt like maybe we knew something they didn't. It felt like we were in on something. Because really, at that time, there weren't very many people in the province casting spey rods. It was
I like
sort
that
of
feeling.
Darren's little crew, and every time we saw somebody,
This was like 2010-ish.
Yeah, it would be probably 2011, 2012, somewhere around there.
Nice.
Every time we saw someone that was like that we didn't know and they had a spey rod, we'd be like, "Who's that guy? Why don't we know that guy?" Like, because it felt like a.
How does he know?
Yeah, who told him? It felt like a weird little club, but I'm glad that it's gotten more popular now. People are starting to kind of see the use cases for it, which is awesome. 'Cause I think it's a worthwhile set of tools in your toolbox, but. For me, I'm a nerd.
Right.
For anyone who's unfamiliar with me, I'm a big old nerd. I love physics. I love math. I love my computers. And there's so much nerdiness to unpack in spey casting. There's so much physics involved. There's so much technique, so many subtleties, and they all just sort of make sense when you can understand the taper of the lines and you can understand the flex and the load of the rod and how the cast gets you to those places and how the cast puts a load in the rod and what how you change direction with those, all that stuff is so in depth and so logical that it really appealed to me. And so I spent a lot of time researching all of the different spey casts, all the different ways you could present one of those lines. And I kind of made it a personal mission, sort of checking those casts off as I went along. So, okay, you figured out your snap tees. Now figure out a cat-handed snap tee. Now you figured out that. Figure out a double spey. Figure out a cat-handed double spey. And I worked my way up. And I ended with a snake roll. And then I felt like I'd arrived. Okay, you can do all the casts now, and now make them better, make them good, make them perfect.
Mm.
And if you have all the casts, there's a number of sort of modifications on spey casts, but there's 4 principal spey casts you can do over either shoulder. So you've got 8 in total. And if you've got all 8, I don't know if there's too many places you can't get a line out. It's and to me, that's the big advantage. So
Right.
yeah, and I guess to answer the follow-up portion of your question, what I turned it into, I people started asking a lot of questions about spey, and at one point I was approached by some friends of mine that we're going to launch an Orvis 50/50 on the water event
Nice.
for women in the province, and they wanted to know if I would teach spey casting at it. And I was very nervous about this at the time. These are people that I knew, but kind of mostly knew from the internet. I didn't really know them super well in person, and it was far away. It was at a lodge, like 3.5 hours from my house, and I was feeling a little bit of the imposter syndrome, and but I did it. I felt like it was something that would be good for me to do. It would be good for my confidence and good for connections and networking, and it ended up being, good in a lot of ways. It did those things. I built connections, and I did gain a lot of confidence. But it also just felt very emotionally rewarding to help anyone really, but particularly women in the province to get into the sport and to feel like they belonged in the sport, like they could see themselves there and they didn't need to feel anxious getting on the river, and to share that kind of passion with people was really special. And I found it very, very fulfilling after that weekend. And I knew that I wanted to keep being that person for people. I wanted to keep opening that door and letting people feel welcome in the sport and teach them the ways of the spey. So I took up teaching.
Jedi.
I'm not I don't have the master two-hand casting certification. At some point I will. It's on the sheet of to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I just started casually offering lessons, and it kind of really picked up. A lot of people wanted to learn, in particular, like women and stuff, right? That maybe felt a little less comfortable going to the big salmon rivers if they were going on a trip to the Miramichi with their husband or whomever, and they didn't want to feel left out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of took off that way, and I've been doing. They rebranded the event. It's now Atlantic Women on the Fly.
Oh, cool.
And I've done it.
And that was just a few days ago.
It was last weekend. So that's the 3rd year in a row. I've taught spey there and done some sort of instructing streamside as well for people wanting to go fish.
Yeah.
It's been great. It's been really good.
You've been helping Yilma and I out, which is great.
Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't know how to throw a cack-handed anything.
So
what is cack-handed? Is it?
no,
I mean,
just,
it's
no,
probably
I know
a
what
good
it
thing
is.
to maybe.
It's a good thing to ask. Yeah, but before we get into what is cack-handed, we're on the river, and Mitchell did say the best way to fish this portion of the river is to do a cack-handed spey. And Mitchell didn't show you how. They just said how, although walks up to the river and does it perfectly. So I'm not sure.
I'm not going to say perfectly here, brother.
Okay, well, what you take the mic.
Sure.
And explain, because we were talking about this.
Yeah. So, it's I think breaking down the little steps of things for most people, like especially someone like yourself, Aldo, that's been fishing for quite a long time. Everyone knows how to cast at a certain point. They understand what a rod feels like when it's loaded. They understand where to put an anchor. It's just little things. It's always just little things that you can't see. Is really difficult to see on your own. So I think the biggest benefit to hiring an instructor is that you've got someone there with you to debug the cast, to take a look and say, okay,
Yeah.
that was all good. You understand what you're doing. I don't think you're a bad caster, but here's where things went wrong. And all you have to do is correct that one little thing or those two little things or whatever they may be, and you're sorted. And that was true the other day when Susan was out there as well. She was throwing a cack-handed, or no, it was a four-handed snap tee. And there were just like two little things that I noticed in it, and I don't like to just barge in and tell everyone what they're doing wrong. So
I do.
I observe and I make notes in case someone asks, and she did ask, and so I told her there's a couple of little suggestions, and again, she's a fantastic caster. She's been fishing quite a long time. It's not that she doesn't know how to cast; it's just that she didn't notice those two little things.
I will say the one thing that I learned this morning was the pivoting of the hips as the starting point for your...
That's what I've learned this week as well.
I've never really realized how important that is, to understand that you're to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, you're not to do that because you do that kind of naturally when you're sweeping. But to understand that's the starting of your pivot point, and to be more aware of your hips.
Yeah, the hips, I tell everyone this, is like when you're doing any kind of a spey cast that involves a sweep, so that'd be your single spays or your snap tees or your double spays, anything where you need to sweep over to the side to get your anchor set, you don't want to drop or lift the rod tip while you're sweeping. And your hands cannot be trusted. They will drop, they will lift. Your hips are very stable on the horizontal plane. The only way that they are going to dip up or down is if you start doing squats, and I assume you're not going to do that mid-cast. So the hips are key. The hips really...
I don't know about that. I'll do some squats in the river.
Well, whatever it takes to bulk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If it fits your macros. So the hips are really key. And I think a lot of people don't quite realize that. They see a big sweeping motion, they see a rod in someone's hands, they say, great, sweep with the rod. The hips are where it's at, for sure.
Mm.
Again,
Gilmar, you're trying to fight off the urge to say the hips
don't lie.
Yeah.
Mm.
I can like feel it from you. You're like
should I say it now? Later? She's also going to say it?
How important is that sense of community to you? Do you see it growing? Do you see it being more inclusive and welcoming here? Because obviously fly fishing in the past just hasn't been. And then, of course, then you had the layer of salmon fishing where it is, I don't know,
it's an old colonial sport.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a good, I was going to say an old boys club, but that's even.
It's also that.
And it is maybe one of the last, maybe not last, but it still is steeped in affluence, and elitism. So, but do you see it being like here in Nova Scotia? Our licenses were very accessible. You're not paying river access fees. The water is all public. It feels very accessible in that regard, right? But then there's are you feeling that community growing through these events? Are you feeling more
definitely
hopeful? Or
it's getting better and better, I think. Especially, like I said, most of the events that I've been a part of have been women's events, and it's fantastic when you end one of those events and someone says to you, I feel confident enough to go to the river on my own. And that's the main goal of an event like that, is that someone feels comfortable enough to start down the journey to explore this passion that they feel they might have, that they were blocked by, whatever they perceive as, the feeling on the river. And as a queer angler, it's something that I've felt before myself. There's certainly spaces that I end up in the angling community where I still get odd looks from time to time, depending on how I've chosen to present that day. And that's, I know what they look like. I'm fortunately at a point in my fishing career where those looks don't bother me. I know my worth. I know I deserve to take up that space as much as anyone else. And I will take it up if it means that somebody else feels comfortable following behind me. And I feel like that's becoming more and more true of the women in the province as well. We've always had our powerhouses, like Kate. She's like never been afraid to set foot on a river, and that's fantastic. And there's a few others like her as well that are really confident and really talented anglers, and they've certainly helped pave the way for a lot of other newer women anglers in the province. And then on top of these events, so I'm very encouraged by that.
Kate is intimidatingly good.
She is salmon queen for sure. She's very talented salmon angler.
Well, that's good. That's a
Yeah.
good feeling. I mean, we felt welcomed by you in this community. It was great to, we've been chatting online for so long. It's great to, and I mean, we've fished together in Ontario. Funny enough, but never here. So this is special. So yeah, this is awesome.
This is good.
Well, that's good. That's I don't know. It sounds hopeful. Certainly when you're driving around. Like I mean, even our first day running into the Susans, and then everyone else seems to be quite, or everyone we've run into is quite friendly. So yeah, it's good vibes.
Yeah, it's good community. Like I think we talked about before too. It's on the whole a really positive, really welcoming community. And like every spot, there's bad apples. There's people that try to sow a little bit of division once in a while and things come up. But I think those people are really few and far between. And I think at this point, the rest of the community is so loving and so welcoming and so like open arms that those people kind of feel like outcasts for making other people try to feel like outcasts, which is a cool role reversal.
Yep. It's happening.
Definitely.
It's all happening.
Fly tying.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much I want to nerd out about speak.
Okay, well, no, keep saying. Yeah, no, I thought that pause meant.
No. I want to get to the fly time because it's
I'm
pretty
game.
amazing.
Yeah. I'm an open book. Lay it on me.
Wait. Before we go, actually, yeah, you're right. Before we go fly tying, so are you? So I know you have your day job, and I know you have this wonderful other life, but in the spey realm, are you gonna? Do you wanna? Is the dream to make it into a school? Did you want to continue this education? I know that you wanted to get the license, what is
certification.
Certification.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, what's the
Grand
future?
poobah of the spey rod.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think they hand out that title after a certain point, and I'm really chasing it.
Master Jedi.
Yeah. What's the?
Can I say just like there are a lot of black flies around your face?
I'm aware. Yeah, I'm acutely aware.
We're all
of the
holding
number.
it. We're all holding it together here, but it is
I'm just
wild.
like,
I was like, oh, it'll be so nice. We'll do it outside, the mountains, the birdies chirping.
They're not actually landing on me a whole lot, which is fortunate.
They're landing, but they're not biting.
Yeah, there's
They're tickling me. That's the annoying part.
Well, let's not tempt fate here.
No, let's not call them out.
Yeah.
Not give them an invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ultimate goal, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. The goal is to kind of keep doing more and more of these events. I did get my guide's license a couple seasons ago, and that's been good. It's kind of opened a few. Thank you. Yeah, we have a good guides course here in the province, so
Radical.
It's I know it's not a thing everywhere that there's like a program.
Definitely not in Ontario.
Yeah.
You can just like say you're a guide.
Yeah, that I remember I asked you that one time. I was like, what did you guys have to do to become guides? And you're like, we just started guiding. But I do, not to say, I do think that you guys are pretty qualified at this point in your careers. But so
for one specific river.
Yeah, just
you got that one dial.
we do. Yes, the Lady Evelyn is like the back of my hand for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. No, and that's what you want from a guide is that kind of knowledge, that very colloquial knowledge. So.
That being said, like I don't want to cheapen our Ontario guides. It's just that it's funny that you can. I mean, you legitimize. I guess like what legitimizes you is in Ontario is like
street cred.
Is your street cred and how you carry yourself and people that Mitchell like Jeff Parks and Matt Martin and Jordan Pocket, who is actually on his way to the Margaree, not specifically here to this Airbnb, but I know Jordan's stoked to come fish these, whereas they legitimize themselves with the way they act and their knowledge. If you spend time with these people, they're awesome.
And in some ways, that's almost better, right? You know of someone because they have made themselves worth knowing. It's sort of their reputation precedes them, Whereas here it's. I mean that certainly happens too. There are guides that are very, very well known and have certainly earned their reputation, but anyone that has taken the course calls himself a guide. And not that you don't need a guide anywhere in the province. It's just nice to know that you're fishing with someone that understands the rivers. So. But yeah, that's to go back to your original question. I think the long-term goal for me is not necessarily more one-on-one guiding. Well, I enjoy doing that, but to do more of these events, to do more sort of big open arms, inviting things. I'd love to sort of help pioneer the spey scene on this side of Canada. I feel like we're still kind of in our infancy on spey, and I feel like there's a lot of places we could go with it. A lot of the styles of spey casting that we fish or that are more effective here are more similar to Europe than they are to the West Coast.
Okay, yeah.
So just
We're
sort
all
of
on Scandi lines here.
yeah, exactly, all
Yeah.
on Scandi stuff, floating, long leaders, touch and go casts, very very European as opposed to steelheady.
Right.
So I think it would be cool to sort of take that and run with it, and sort of introduce brands to the possibility of that market, and to get more rods in people's hands. I'd love to do some like demo days or some like sort of mass demos and instructions sort of thing. Get more rods in people's hands. Get people trying different lines and different casts and learning different things, and just sort of bring spey to the masses and help more people feel comfortable.
I love
Great.
that. I mean, on the space side of things, like we tend to fish steelheady because that's what I fish for. So we're like snap teeing and ripping line, but here it's it's cool approaching. I mean, we have Scandi. I think we all use Scandi
Yeah.
and Skagit lines back home.
Yeah, we do.
I know Mitch uses Scandi lines, but I use Skagit lines. Anyway, whatever. I'm spiraling here.
What do we use in
But
BC?
But it's cool. All Skagit.
Oh, Skagit, yeah.
Yeah. But it's cool learning touch and go casts. It's really like delicate.
Very delicate.
Stealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can if you've got a nice long line, you can really drift a D-loop really far.
Mm-hmm.
Throw a very long line with those sort of longer Scandi heads and longer leaders. You can really unload.
Yeah, definitely on a bright sunny day like today. This is our first day of sun. You definitely want it to be a little stealthy.
Definitely. Yeah. A good single spey sounds like almost nothing.
Ninja. Do you think...
Sorry, there's a black fly on my elbow.
Yeah, it's okay. Do you think, welcoming more people to you means you're already doing women events. Do you think queer events would be something you'd like to do here, or something that you see necessary? Or?
I am so glad you brought that up. I would love nothing more. Any queer folks listening that are interested in learning to spey cast, please. I know that there are queer anglers out there in the Maritimes and beyond, and I'd love to meet you.
That's amazing.
The community is small, but every year, I make a point, especially during Pride Month, to sort of put out a pride fly and be like, by the way, this page is a safe space for all members of the queer community. And every year I learn of, one or two more people, they reach out and they say thank you for that or whatever. And it's really great to hear that. And I would love to just have like a little network or a space where people feel safe to explore the passion of fly fishing or of spey casting. As members of the queer community.
Awesome. I'm going to use that as a transition point because that pride fly was sick.
Thank you.
And every year, you put so many beautiful flies on your page, but that's always a fun one.
Yeah.
And do you do a different pattern every year?
Yeah. So usually I take it as a creative opportunity. These days, with my more traditional salmon fly kick, I don't do a whole lot of freestyle stuff, but usually that's a creative chance. This year, there was a pattern kind of in my backlog that I had been meaning to tie for a while, and I kind of tucked it away and thought, maybe Pride Month comes along, maybe I feel inspired, and was the Rainbow by Tollfree, and it just felt fitting. So it was my chance to tackle that fly. It's a pretty involved fly. It was a large one. That one was a 6/0. Yeah. Woof.
How long did that take?
That one, it went together faster.
4 hours.
More than that. But still quicker than most of my traditional flies take. That one, it didn't fight me that much. Usually those topping wings really fight you, but that one was pretty good. So that was probably like a 6-hour fly.
Jesus.
Can I have it?
For the right price.
No. Mitchell's seen what we do with the classic salmon flies.
I haven't used your classic yet.
Oh my God. Well, we'll get to that story in a second. So you started to, obviously, you already mentioned you started tying pretty much right when you started fishing, which is awesome. When did that become a serious thing, and when did you get into the classics, like you said, the classic salmon kick?
Yeah,
or traditional salmon kick. Yeah.
One of my old fly tying mentors was adamant that there was a distinct difference between those two terms, because there was a resurgence of classic salmon fly tying in the kind of 90s and early 2000s, and a lot of those styles popular then. I'm derailing a little bit. A lot of the
No,
styles,
no, please.
yeah, a lot of the style that came out of that sort of era of salmon flies was a much more modern take, a more modern shape and feeling to the fly, and the proportions were a bit more modern. So he would call things like that classic, and he would call the truly, classic patterns or classic takes on patterns traditional salmon flies. Yeah. Anyway, so my journey in fly tying.
Just a second before we go too far down there. What are some patterns that are traditional? Like, you can name some.
Oh yeah,
like a green Highlander.
A green Highlander is a traditional pattern.
Like the one I lost the other day.
Yeah,
Is that the same one that I have?
for example.
Yeah, okay.
No, that's I tied that for fishing, and so I'm happy that you fished it. It brings me more joy that you fished it than sadness that you lost it.
Okay.
I promise. I'm not just saying that. I want people to fish them. I think it's very cool to fish traditional flies.
I also think that,
Yeah.
especially in a place like this.
Yeah, exactly. So the green Highlander, and there's a couple different.
I'm devastated.
So yours was a Kelson green Highlander, and there's also a Price Tannic green Highlander. Those were kind of the two very popular ones.
Those are 4 hours to make?
Yeah, about that for those fishing
Yeah.
ones. 3 or 4 hours for those. I tied them in kind of production mode. So
How could you?
they went a little quicker. No, it's good. I want people to fish them. So maybe not the ones with gut eyes. I want you also to land fish. But yeah. So sorry, I lost track of your original question.
At what point did you learn to fly fish? You learned to fly type pretty much right away.
Right.
And then was there a moment where you were like, yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I want
So
to get into a more serious level of tying?
for a lot of years, I was always a decent fly tyer, and I really enjoyed it. I loved collecting all these materials and nerding out at the vise and being kind of a mad scientist, and that's sort of how my feelings towards fly tying started. It was a very creative journey. It was sort of like, let's see what happens if I strap these two things to a hook. How do they move in the water? How do they look together? How do the colors blend? How do the textures blend? All that fun stuff. And I found it very rewarding to be creative. And I would have something come off the vise, and I was very happy with it. And I'd stick it in the box, and then I would tie 12 other flies that looked nothing alike. They were all completely different. And by the time I go to fish them, I look in the box, and you're almost sort of overwhelmed by the choice, and you kind of don't remember why you maybe tied one over the other. Anyway, you get kind of down this creative rabbit hole. And one of my other fly tying mentors used to make fun of me because I never picked up a book, and he was adamant that that's where you learn to tie flies. It's not from pictures on the internet. It wasn't from posts and forums. It was from picking up a book and reading the patterns and learning about the proportions and learning about the traditional materials that were used. And he didn't necessarily mean for traditional salmon flies, but for like all of our modern day wet flies that were popularized throughout the 20th century. All those things have proportions.
So that would be like a blue charm, Casa boom kind of
definitely
like era fly.
And even like the blue charm and the Casa boom started as, well, not the Casa boom, but the blue charm started as a traditional pattern. There's a full dressed blue charm, and similarly there's a hairwing green Highlander, for example. That all came about when the British kind of brought salmon fishing to Newfoundland and to other parts of the Maritimes, and then the sailors would leave, and we don't have access to things like, Cory bustard here, and swan dyed in all these different colors, and golden pheasants, and all these things. So they just used what they had. They had squirrels, and they had moose, and they had deer, and so they used those things instead. And that's how we have our modern hairwing flies, and they work.
That's
just
really cool.
fine.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I mean, it's very logical, but
Yeah,
I just thought people didn't want to buy the material.
I don't blame them. The materials aren't cheap. Yeah, that's how those things came about. And so I didn't want to pick up those books for a long time. It just didn't appeal to me to tie something that somebody else had already come up with. It wasn't about that for me at first. And then at a certain point, I got really obsessed with steelhead flies, ironically. Because the man who taught me how to fly fish, very influenced by steelhead culture, being that there wasn't really a spey culture on the East Coast. And so a lot of the flies he liked to fish were like tubes or intruders or, like different things like that. And so I started experimenting with these kind of more steelheady spey type flies, and eventually picked up. It was Jay Nicholas and I don't remember the other author that wrote Modern Steelhead Flies, and I tied my way through that book. I tied every pattern in the book, and I loved it. I was getting like more and more down the rabbit hole, and there were a couple mentions of steelhead flies in that book that were like a little bit more classic steelhead, like Sid Glasso's patterns and stuff like that, that kind of lead you in the direction of traditional spey flies. And so then I picked up Bob Vaverka's book, and I tied my way through that. And that is just an encyclopedia of spey and D patterns. It really lays down the groundwork, gives you all the proportions, all the good stuff. I went through bronze mallard like it was nobody's business, like it came on tap. And I really...
There aren't enough ducks in the world.
Not enough ducks out here. Yeah, I loved it. I really loved tying those flies, and that, it just sort of, it just snowballed really quick. Because, the first book was all modern steelhead stuff, but mentioned a little bit of the traditional spey stuff. And then the second book was like mostly traditional spey stuff, but then mentioned a little bit about traditional salmon flies. And then it was like, oh, how do I tie one of those? And suddenly I was in the rabbit hole, and I, couldn't find a way out.
It had to be mastered.
It had to be done. And so I really sunk my teeth into that. Now that was 2 or 3 years ago, that I really dove headlong into traditional salmon flies. I've had some really, really helpful mentors along the way that are super talented. There's a friend of mine in PEI that I fish with fairly regularly when I go there, and when he comes here, his name's Tyler Thompson. Phenomenal fly tyer. Find him on the internet. He's incredible.
Tyler Thompson. Put him in the show notes.
Put him in the show notes. He's amazing. Really, really awesome fellow. And so every time I tied a fly, I would kind of lay it bare. I'd send it to people like Tyler, or people like my friend Todd Kennedy, another phenomenal fly tyer, and or Brendan Toner, Amber Toner's husband.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. He's another fly tying mentor of mine, and I would kind of send it to this little trusted inner circle of people I could take the heat from. Like I knew them well enough that I trusted their opinion, and I wanted to hear it. And so I'd send them flies and say, like, what, I'm unhappy with this for this reason. What could I have done? And they were super generous. They all would give slightly different feedback, all something different to work on each time. And I feel like that was pretty key to getting better at it, was just sort of accepting my humility.
Very cool.
What? Man. We're doing good for time. We're at like...
That's good news.
45 minutes, so we'll spend the next 15 minutes going down a bit of a flight. What steps go into... Because obviously, when you're tying like an Adams, you're looking at the proportion of the body, the hook, tail, hackle length, you're measuring hackle. And these are very simple steps to getting a fly that's proportioned and good. Well, how much... for the people who are unfamiliar with traditional salmon flies, of course, they're very ornate to look at. But like, how much prep goes before you even make the first thread wrap?
Oh, a lot of prep for sure. So, like for example, most traditional salmon fly hooks are blind, so they don't have an eye on them, and that's intentional. That's the way they were traditionally tied. They didn't have the means of bending their steel hooks into that shape at a certain point in time. And so they would tie the eye in afterwards, and the eye was made out of braided silkworm gut. And so that got tied in as part of the underbody.
Yelma's mind is snapping.
And some people still use...
Why?
That's what it was. That was a strong material. Silkworm gut is strong stuff, and it would compress, and it was, lightweight, and it checked a lot of boxes. Modern day, it's challenging to get silkworm gut unless you stumble upon an old stash, or you happen to know someone, or you yourself are someone who breeds silkworms. That's a thing that people do now.
Isn't
the
resource depleting?
I'm getting the feeling I'm sitting across from a silkworm breeder.
You are not.
Oh, okay.
Thankfully, I've not dealt.
You're like, I have a partner of 10 years, so I don't breed silkworms.
Correct. I have to draw the line somewhere, and
I thought
I've chosen it is pre-silkworm.
I thought the resource was depleting, though.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know how.
Is there an underground silkworm breeding
I mean,
There has to be. If people are breaking into museums and stealing feathers.
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
But in modern day
Nice.
flies, a great alternative, what looks an awful lot like braided silkworm gut, is just braided monofilament.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I have like 3 pound ultra green, and there's a whole process involved in braiding your gut loop before you ever tie the fly. Everyone's kind of got a different process for doing it. Some people furl them. Some people have like a technique with a dubbing spinner. And anyway, that's a whole process. There's the whole process of prepping your materials, your toppings in particular, the golden pheasant toppings for both the topping on top of the fly and then also the tail need to be kind of prepared. They usually get kind of wonky in the package. They're all over the place. You want them to splay out really nice. So there's a whole step involved in prepping those and making sure they're going to lay in the right shape and sizing them. And a ton of prep work goes in before you ever touch the hook.
What elements of a traditional salmon fly might not exist in a regular fly? So you look at a regular fly, you're like, it's usually got a body, probably has a wing if it's a dry fly, or, a tail. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a nymph or a streamer or whatnot, maybe not modern streamers, but, if you look at a Mickey fin has a hair, wing,
yep.
A tail and a body. What are the elements, like you were mentioning, like the golden pheasant or whatever, what are elements that might differ? There's a wing, there's a tail, there's a body. Definitely,
but there's a bunch of kind of like sub pieces. So when you see a pattern written down for a traditional salmon fly, the list is quite long, and it's like any other pattern. It's here's the wing, here's the tail, here's whatever.
Yeah, here's the hook.
But there's the hook, there's the tip, the tag, the tail veilings, the butt, the rib, the hackle, the body, the throat, the underwing, the main wing, the overwing, the cheeks, the sides, the horns, the head. Those are, I think, all of the pieces that could be listed in the pattern. So there's a lot of elements involved. Not every fly has all those elements, and not every one of them has complex elements of all those pieces. Yeah. But one, so for example, something you don't very often see, you do sometimes, but very often do you see, or not very often do you see, in modern hair wing takes on traditional patterns, like an ostrich herl butt. So almost all, not all, but a great number of traditional salmon flies have an ostrich herl butt after you've tied the tail in to separate the tail from the body. And that means that you've got something covering the tie-in point of the tail that won't show a bump.
Oh.
But we skip that step in most modern salmon flies. Married wings is another thing that doesn't really happen in modern salmon flies. Traditional flies were tied with several different birds' feathers, little strips of each, remarried together as though they were one feather, and then tied in on top of the hook. It's the scariest part of every fly I've ever tied. The wing will sometimes just explode in your hands, and you can sometimes salvage it and sometimes you can't. And even just building a married wing sometimes takes like 45 minutes or an hour.
Wow.
And you just have to accept it and move on. You've ruined that wing. Yeah. Those are some of the kind of more obvious elements.
He almost like, and you lost one. See, this is why I think you would like fly tying. Like, I mean, you're a designer, you meticulously like
pixel push.
Like, I really think you would like proportioning all these things out and making sure they look beautiful.
Yeah.
You spend your whole life making things look beautiful.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, one day.
Man, I'm not saying you have to do it,
My
but
fly
I'm
tying,
just saying I think that's why you would enjoy it.
My fly tying years haven't started yet.
The best is yet to come.
Mm-hmm.
Best is yet to come. Okay, that's cool. Do you ever see yourself, because, we used to work at Drift Outfitters, and Chris also ties traditional and has, entered himself into competitions. He's a very competitive person.
Very.
But he's very, he excels at many things, and competitive angling and traditional fly tying is one of them. Do you ever do you compete? Do you ever send those away? Do you care?
I'm not a very.
I don't care about competitive fly fishing, for example. You don't have to. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. I'm not a very competitive person. I'm pretty chill about pretty much all things. But like sometimes if there's like a little Facebook contest or whatever, I'll throw a fly in the mix and see how it does. I did win one over the winter, which was nice. It was
Nice.
like a fly tying kind of popularity contest. That
Oh.
was cool.
I voted for
Amazing.
you.
Oh, thank you. Much appreciated.
Team Mitchell.
Team
Boink.
Mitchell.
Yeah.
Deadly. Yeah. Well, that's, and I was in all fairness, that particular fly, that was a Greenwell. It's one of my favorite patterns. And I don't often feel a really strong sense of pride. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but when I finish one of those flies, I've spent so long with it that I know all of the things that I don't like. I know all of the little pieces that I
yeah.
think could have gone
Such a
better.
designer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
You honestly would probably really love this. You could get really in this rabbit hole, Yilma.
For sure.
But that one in particular, I finished and was like, yes, I like this fly.
Yes.
I like the proportions. I like the way everything's sitting. I like the way it photographed. It was good. And so I felt good about putting it in the competition. It was very vindicating to have it come out on top. So
Nice. You shoot your own flies?
yeah.
Nice.
I have, I should show you sometime. Before ring lights were popular because of the TikTok, and you couldn't just buy one at Dollarama. Your favorite queer over here had a harebrained scheme.
Everybody's favorite.
Everybody's favorite queer on the internet had a harebrained scheme. I had an old piece of pine in my little scrap collection of wood, and I had a scroll saw. And so I cut a ring out of a scroll saw, and I cut a dowel down
No,
the
you
sides.
didn't. You made your own ring light.
I ordered an LED strip off of Amazon, and
Good for you.
I made sure that the
kinda
dowel
wanna
fit
see
in
this.
a vice clamp, and so that's my ring light that I use for all of my fly photos.
That's hilarious.
You are a nerd.
I'm a huge nerd.
Right on, brother.
Up top,
I
brother.
love it.
Um,
I'm glad you did that. That's awesome.
another friend of ours, Mike Crap, I just learned, I think Jordan was telling
Yeah.
me that Mike takes his fly photos in a Pringle can or something,
That's
or like tries
hilarious.
to isolate them. It's something, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, Mike, if you're listening, sorry if I blew a secret. But his fly photos are sweet too. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yours are great. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. That's
It's
awesome.
it's about as backwoods as a ring light gets.
I love it. Well, we're at an hour, and I can't help but
Richie Fishy
notice.
Five?
Yeah, I can't help but notice the sun is starting to dip behind the hills, which is when we start seeing salmon move around,
Mm-hmm.
and we're right around the corner from a pool. So, yeah, we got to hit.
We're going to that pool?
Well, we're just gonna go right over
Yeah,
here.
that's the one of me.
Yeah,
Yeah, great.
Why
yeah, by
not?
the bridge.
No, I just thought, I don't know if plans changed because I was sleeping. So,
No. I mean, we're so close to home, and we've
Great.
got. Well, when Scotty showed up earlier, he has frozen lasagna for us to eat.
oh, no pizza? Oh.
I guess he didn't find any.
Yeah, I didn't find any.
Anyway, enough about lasagnas. Okay. It sucks that Mitch isn't here to deliver the Mitchie's Fishies 5 to Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a
It's a missed
vortex of
opportunity.
Mitch.
Let's FaceTime him in. We should FaceTime him for this.
But of course, the Mitchie's Fishies 5 are a set of 5 questions that we ask all of our guests, and who knows, maybe we'll make a book one day. Be kind of
I'm staring at you.
I can see that
be kind of sweet.
very intently.
Yeah.
You know.
These are
Kinda
my
sweet.
favorite.
So yeah, Mitchie's Fishy number 1. What is your favorite fish and why?
Do you have a guess?
I have a pretty strong guess.
Very
yeah.
strong guess, yeah.
I really love Atlantic salmon. It's I mean, you felt the tug yesterday, and you've landed some fish yourself. It's pretty indescribable.
It is indescribable.
Yeah, they're just such an impressive fish. They're an indicator of healthy streams. They're symbolism for perseverance and a lifelong journey and passion, and they're just incredible beings on this earth. They can find their way back to not only the river they were born in, but sometimes the exact same pool they were born in after thousands of miles in the ocean. They're just so impressive to me, and the fact that I can put a line in the water over and over again, mind you, but put a line in the water and maybe get a chance to interact with this incredible creature on its lifelong journey to return home and make new generations of fish. That's pretty friggin' special.
Well said.
Well said. I will ask for an appendix here. You want to go through what happened yesterday morning in terms of
Oof.
interacting with one?
Oh, did we ever interact? Yeah, no, I
Because we didn't touch on that. We gotta talk about the salmon that almost was.
that almost was. Spoiler alert. we were fishing the top of a pool, and I put on my favorite pattern, and I was just chatting with Yilma. This always happens in salmon fishing, by the way. The moment you're just like chatting away, or you're like looking at the birds or something, you just get slammed. Like it just annihilates your fly and makes you want to poop your pants. And that low key is exactly what happened. I was talking to Yilma, and all of a sudden my rod was being ripped out of my hands, and I tightened up, and this really gorgeous fish shot out of the water. It was a good 15 or 16 pound fish, I would guess from my distance.
The fish was huge.
It was
huge.
I reviewed the footage. Yilma got it all in slow-mo.
It was I'm super thankful that you did. A big part of salmon fishing for me is I don't have a great long-term memory, and if I get like a photo of the fish at the end, then I'm like, great, I'm gonna remember everything about this fish. And then when I lose them, sometimes it's depressing for that reason alone. I mean, I don't mind, I interacted with it one way or another, but I would love to get the opportunity to get a photograph of it and remember it. So the fact that you caught that all on video and the fish jumped out of the water during the fight is, I'm super thankful.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, the fish ran down and bulldogged and went right back to its lie, and then went for a run. And when it went for a run, I guess its lie was likely behind a rock because I broke it off. And
yeah, we touched the leader after. Not to interrupt, but we touched the leader after, and it was all braised. Yeah.
It was.
Frayed.
It was frayed and
Braised.
yes,
Frayed. What did I say?
Braised.
Is that not a word?
Yeah, but like more so when you're cooking
like,
meats.
like beef.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like braised beef.
I do prefer my leaders slow cooked.
Okay, it was frayed.
I tend to braise my leaders in barbecue sauce.
They go down a lot easier that way.
Man.
No,
I'm here for a good time.
no, but it was all frayed from a rock, and there was some like kind of algae or like remnants on it, so it was pretty clear what had happened. I got some good tips from Scotty afterward because I wasn't sure what I could have done there, but the answer was move my feet. Should have ran after it downstream so it didn't have so much line to play with and get around a rock on me. But that makes total sense after the fact, but in the moment I was just so stunned by what was happening. Yeah, I was like,
they're so
holy
strong.
crap.
It's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. And then after it broke me off, I was like, I turned around. I was like, oh man. And it gave you the old like the middle finger jump afterward too. It shot out of the water one more time just to be like,
did.
by the way.
Yeah.
And we're gonna post this on our Instagram probably to promote this show. But yeah, this is this awesome moment where you're like, like in slow mo.
Yeah.
You got your hands on your knees, and as you have your hands on your knees, lamenting what just happened. Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting it, Mitchell. The fish is jumping out of the air, just being like, "Fuck you!"
You can see, like, you can read my lips in that photo. I was like, wow.
Yeah,
like,
then you turn to the camera, you're like, wow.
Oh, it was just so special to interact with fish like that, especially ones that bright and that size. Right?
Yeah.
Like that fish was pretty fresh from the ocean and full of piss and vinegar.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Mitchie's fishies too.
Anywhere in the world? Is that this one?
Well, these might be out of order, but yeah, if you could fish anywhere on Earth, and it was the best, time to do so, like what would you fish for?
Well,
Or where would you?
Where
go?
would you go?
where would I go?
Yeah.
So I've been a long time listener to this show. I've toyed over these questions a lot, and you'd think I'd have concrete answers by now. I always thought I would say Chile and Patagonia to this question, but I actually think I would want to go to like northern Norway or Sweden.
Yeah, I see that for you.
And just fish big old rods, big old long heads, and big old casts for big old salmon. I think that would be pretty stellar. Fish the midnight sun. I think that's on my bucket list.
That would be so cool.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's like
and
3
talk
o'clock
about
in the
pike,
morning.
like 3 a.m. and
Oh, bring me. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's.
Done.
You guys haven't had enough of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
No, you know what? With
No.
the midday nap, it's quite reasonable.
The salmon siesta is a real part of the journey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's my answer. Is I would love to go fish Scandinavia for big salmon.
Awesome answer.
Yeah.
What, number 3,
Mm.
is your favorite fishing memory?
Oh.
Fishing memory.
I wouldn't have remembered that one.
Yeah, actually, this
Good
one,
one.
I do have a concrete answer for, and I'm very fortunate. I think that every year that I spend on the water, because like I said, been a long time listener, I think about this question a lot. Not just because I was dreaming of being on the show one day, but because I think it's an important.
Very few people dream of that.
I think it's an important question to ponder, right? Like what memories did you make this season that you are grateful for, right? That stick with you. Like I said, my memory's not great. And so when I do have those special moments, I really like to reminisce on them a lot and really keep those in the noggin because they're special. And every year I think I get one that tops the previous year. And I think that's pretty fortunate. So, I think I told Yilma this story over the weekend at some point, but this happened last year on the Margaree in early July. I was up here for another women's event. My friend Joya would frequently host women's salmon fishing retreats on the Margaree at Live Life Intense. And we were hosting one of these events. Scotty and Kate were guiding. I was doing some like fly tying and casting instructing, so I wasn't needed that morning. All the ladies were going off and going out for a fish, and Joy said, well, you can meet us later. Like, why don't you go for a fish? I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I said, where do you think I should go? And she was like, I don't know, maybe go to swimming hole. So I went to swimming hole.
I love that the pools are named. I love that shit.
All of the pools. And I don't know.
There's a sign at all of them.
People get uppity, but the pools are all on Google Maps. Like, you can go into any convenience store around here and get a map of the Margaree that's been the same for 100 years. So I pulled on down to the pool, and there was a father and son there. And I got chatting with them and, came to learn that they were both kind of newer anglers, but the son was like super into it. He loved fly fishing, head over heels in love. And so it's something that his dad sort of picked up more to spend more time with his son. And I thought that was super nice. And they were really friendly. The kid was 11 years old and really into it. He ties flies as well. And he had started spey casting, and both of which he was doing quite well with, especially for an 11-year-old. He was incredible. So anyway, they were super friendly, and he said, you know what, we've been seeing a few fish show, and he pointed to a couple spots in the pool, and he said, go have a pass, like, go get them. So I looked through the box, and I picked out this fly that a friend of mine had told me to tie for a trip to New Brunswick last year. And I thought, he's a fishy guy, and there's no reason that his flies wouldn't work in the Margaree. So I stuck one on, and I put it, was putting it through the pool, and I got to a spot where the dad had told me that a fish had risen, and sure enough, I rose a fish, and I said, okay, we're doing it. And so I said, stay calm, everybody, stay calm. And I put the fly back there, and I hooked the fish, and it was a really nice, really bright, like almost translucent silver grilse. And it gave me a run. Grilse are notoriously spunky, and they run up and down the pool, and they're very difficult to net on your own or tail on your own, even more difficult to tail. And so
much energy.
They
teenage energy.
They have a bunch of teenage angst, and the wrist, the part by the tail, is so much smaller that it is difficult to tail one. So you really do want the net. But then, trying to navigate the 12-foot rod and the net. Anyway, the father noticed that I couldn't net the fish on my own, so he came down. He said, "Let me do that for you." So he grabbed the net, and he netted the fish, and I was so stoked. This was I fished the Margaree a lot, but I've never had great luck here. That was my first Margaree fish that I had landed.
Wow.
I had hooked many, but that was my first one landed, and I was like just beaming. And the son, immediately jumped in and helped too. He grabbed the net while I took the fish out. The dad took a photo for me. We got the fish back right away. It was just sort of perfect, right? And I was just beaming. And I said, you know what? One good turn deserves another. I'd like you each to have one of this pattern, right? So I reached into my box and I gave them each one of this fly that had worked so well for me. And
that's awesome.
I said, go get them. Like, it's your turn. I've done what I needed to do. And so I sat down, and the dad was moving his way into the pool, and he put out a couple casts, and he said, you know what, I'm going to tie on that fly of yours. And he cut off his fly, and he put on mine. And I think he had 3 in the water before a salmon smoked it, like a nice fish. And this is a pretty clear pool. It's, it's lower water in the summertime, and it's a pretty deep pool. And so you don't see the fish until they start moving. And boy, did they ever start moving. Because this fish was just, sort of bullying them out of the way as it was being played. And they were, we saw 6 or 7 distinct fish just move while this one was being played. And the son was getting so excited. He's like, oh my God, there's fish everywhere. There's fish everywhere, Dad. I gotta go fish. I said, you go on ahead. I said, I'll take your dad's net. I'll net this fish for your dad. You go get a fish. So he tied on that fly. He went up, and I'm there, just waiting to net the dad's fish. And I start hearing the kid shout, he's double header. He's screaming from up the shore. He is so stoked. He's got a grilse on. And it's a smaller one, so he's able to land it himself. And just as he kind of lands his down near us, I've netted the dad's fish, and they both landed their fish right around the same time, and we got pictures of both of them.
Wow.
And it was just
You told the story better this time.
I had
Very
to-
exciting.
Salmon.
I had to leave you wanting something, right? It was
It was
just the
good.
most perfect morning I could imagine. I went out at 8:30. I was back to the campground for 9:30. It was just
Wow.
perfect. I couldn't have made the day better by staying. That was perfect, and so that was my whole day of fishing. I ended it right there. That
I love that.
is my current
Yeah, it's a
favorite
good
fishing
story.
memory.
Very good story.
Great story. Number 4.
What is it?
Oh, I know it.
Oh, you know?
But
Okay.
just you know what? You have that photo?
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, I'll find it.
That'd be a good episode image.
Yeah, EP image. Send it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my Instagram. I
Yeah.
think.
Number 4, Mitchie's Fishies 5. Why do you fly fish? What do you get out of fly fishing?
Yeah, I do. I think about this a lot, and I think, as many of your guests have said, there's a plethora of reasons that we all enjoy fly fishing. There's the community aspects, there's the technical aspects. I think the big one for me is that I've always had a lot of anxiety, and dealt with my share of things. And the river is a place where it's not so much about checking your brain out. It's that you are so wholly engrossed in the thing that you're doing and the surroundings that you're in and the thing that you're after and the goal that you've set, that your brain is just spinning with enough revs that other things sort of work themselves out as you go. So if you've got problems, they're spinning in the background while you're figuring out these other problems, right? You're figuring out what fly to pick next, how to present your swing, where the fish might be holding, how could I improve that last cast? All these little problems keep the other problems in your brain churning. The problem solving aspect is also huge for me. I love puzzles, big puzzle person. Do a crossword a day at minimum.
Oh, nice.
Sudoku a day at minimum. I love puzzles. I love figuring things out. And fly fishing, I did a whole presentation on this for work one time about how fly fishing made me a better software developer, because it's just puzzles. It's one puzzle after another. There's so many little puzzles, and they all contribute to these larger puzzles. And the big puzzle, the how do you catch every fish, is sort of ephemeral. It can't be solved, but you can always be striving to solve it. And I think that is what keeps it so interesting.
That's a unique answer.
Did you think of this?
I think a lot about these things.
No, this question. That was great.
I mean, do you not think about why you fly fish when you're on the river?
No.
Okay. No, it's a good thing. I mean, I don't know.
No, I don't.
Well, I mean,
it's
and
nice
maybe-
to not. It's nice to not think.
Maybe that's why you
Yeah.
fly fish, right? Is because you don't have to think about anything.
Absolutely. But what I was saying, that answer was beautiful. It was beautiful. It's one of those things where I'd have to think, write it, get someone to publish it, make sure it's grammatically correct, and then I would say it. But you said it like that.
I think about it a lot.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great answer.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It is a really good question.
It's
Like
such
I
a
said,
simple question, but it's like,
Everyone-
hey, why do you fly fish? It's like, whoa, okay, wait a second.
and I found too, like with people that fly fish, I think it's probably similar to other hobbies where people are very passionate. Hobbies that have quote unquote bums. People that really dive into something and devote a significant portion of their life to it. Something has to make them devote that much attention to it, right? There's something
Yeah.
that draws them in beyond just, oh, fish are cool. Like, I'd love to catch a fish. More power to you. But like, especially salmon fishing, you're very seldom doing that. There's got to be more, right?
Uh-huh.
And for me, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Puzzles.
Like, there are people out there that go fishing, they catch a fish, and they're like, I'm good.
Yep.
I don't understand those people, but they exist. Not us.
I'm gonna think about it on my drive to the pool tonight.
Well, it's a two millisecond drive.
Better start now.
Okay, the last one, and I'm very curious
I
to
already
hear
know the
your answer. Really?
Yeah.
Mr. Roberts, if you were a fly, Mission Fishy number 5, if you were a fly, what would you be? If you were a fly pattern, what would you, Mitchell Roberts, classic traditional salmon, fly tire, spey, Jedi?
How disappointed would you be if I told you a woolly bugger?
I want it
you-
to be a
It's not a
non-salmon
woolly
fly.
bugger.
I would like. I think it would be funny, apropos, if it wasn't one of these flies. But
It's
I'm
not
just curious.
It's not a full dress salmon fly. I've thought about this a lot, and I feel like it has to be at least a little bit higher brow than like a herring or something. I think it's a Lady Caroline. And
Oh my God, Mitch would have loved that
Yeah.
answer.
so here are the many reasons. The Lady Caroline seems like it's a fancy fly. It's not really. It's a very practical fly. The colors are very muted. It's olive and it's brown. It's very natural looking. There's nothing super embellished about it, but it's still elegant. It's still it's a Lady Caroline. It's still a little bit effeminate. It's a good pattern all around, but it's also, it's a little bit oddball. It's not in everybody's box. It's not something most people are going to pull out. But everyone likes it. It's easy going. I think that's why the Lady Caroline appeals to me for this question. And I've thought a lot about this question because it's the hardest one in your 5 for sure to come up with this answer. And
I think the one before is the hardest for me anyways. But yes, it's not my interview.
Yeah, no, and it's a hard question too. It's a philosophical question, but this one, I've stewed on this a lot, and I don't know if there's a better one. The Lady Caroline is practical while being, elegant, and you need to tie it well, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a whole elaborate thing. I don't need things to be a whole elaborate thing.
That's great.
I like that.
I
High
like
five.
that. Well, should we go fishing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
I gotta pee.
Nice. Good way to end the show.
yeah. Deadly boys.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for obviously taking some time out of our fishing day and our salmon siesta to come on the show. We've been wanting to come here and
Mm-hmm.
have you on the show for a while, so it's nice to do it in person. It's
Yeah.
always, I like doing them in person.
Me too.
Better.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
We're outside.
Yeah.
We're having a beer.
Right by the river.
Definitely.
We're right by the river. You can hear the birdies chirping. I always think that's really nice. But yeah, no, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for welcoming us here and inviting us and fishing with us. It's awesome learning from you and having you on the show. But it is shameful plug time. So
Shameful plug. Ugh.
shameful? Shameless.
Shameless?
Shameless.
Okay, shameless it is.
It's shameless plug time. Where can people find your content? How can people book you as a guide, instructor, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
And this will all be in the show notes. So
the best approach is probably through Instagram. I've got an email address too, but Instagram is probably going to get a hold of me quicker anyway, and that's at Life Between Lines. You'll see lots of pictures of flies. If you like those, every now and then a picture of a fish, if I'm so lucky.
boom. There you
Boom.
go. Mitchell Roberts.
Mitchell Roberts.
Thank you guys.
Okay.
Okay, let's go
And-
catch a fish.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's June 29th. This
Yeah.
is coming out July 1st.
Friday.
That's a quick
Saturday.
It's a quick turnaround, but we're gonna get it done.
Yeah,
You're-
we are.
So it's like
Making-
another hot off the press show. Yeah, that's it for me. Aldo, I mean, look out for this show, and on July 15th, we'll be posting a recap show of this whole amazing trip and our time with Kate, Scott, and of course Mitchell in the beautiful Margaree Valley. So again, that's it for me, Aldo, from Nova Scotia, most beautiful place on earth.
Aren't you supposed to say that's it for you? No. Okay. Bye. It's Yilma. See you next time. This was a great show. Mitchell, thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you guys. It's been fun.
Thanks.
Nice.
Bye.